Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Carriger. I am the founder of Seacoast Paddleboard Club. I really appreciate everyone taking time out of their day to join us tonight for our paddle chat. I hope everyone is healthy and doing well. The goal of these chats is to bring the paddle community together here and across the country so we can learn from one another and really just stay optimistic. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Seacoast Paddleboard Club, we are in fact a social club that was formed back in 2015 in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We have just shy of 100 members who actively paddle in New Hampshire, Maine, Vermont, and Massachusetts. Our club motto is to get out on the water, have fun, and give back. So in addition to hosting regular meetup paddles, SPC also hosts regular charity paddles, beach cleanups, and other activities to support our local communities. If you'd like to learn more about Seacoast Paddleboard Club and join us, I would encourage you to check out our website at seacoastpaddleboardclub.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram. Before we dig into tonight's presentation, I just want to give a pause and say thank you. A lot of our club members are nurses and essential employees that are out on the front lines. Some of them can't be with us tonight, but they are always in our thoughts and we're always thinking of them. So I just want to say thank you to everyone out there doing their part. Before we get into tonight's presentation, there's just a couple of housekeeping rules. The presentation is being recorded. You'll be able to access it on YouTube after the fact. For quality purposes, all participants are on mute. If you do have a question, and I hope you have plenty of questions because this is a pretty exciting talk for sure, use the QA chat feature, and I or Chris will be able to respond to your question. And if at all possible, please refrain to asking questions until the end of the presentation. Today's webinar, Everything You Want to Know About Paddleboard, Fins, and Paddles, is being presented by Chris Freeman. Chris is the co-founder and CEO of Black Project, based in Maui, the original home of both paddleboarding and windsurfing. From a young age, Chris has spent a lifetime chasing waves, wind, and water-based adventure. He was born in the UK. Chris grew up windsurfing with his family and quickly turned to racing nationally and internationally. It was his passion for waves and adventure which first drew him to Hawaii in 1995. There he met Tom Hamilton, who he'd later team up with to start Black Project in 2010. Prior to starting Black Project, Chris earned a degree in economics in 1999. He spent the years leading up to 2010 working in the UK, the States, and the Middle East. In 2011, determined to live the life of adventure, Chris moved to Maui full-time and has been working tirelessly to build a brand that helps everyone from elite athletes to everyday paddlers make the most of their time on the water. Chris still competes internationally in the waves and has been attending more races when possible. Like others based in Maui, Chris moved into stand-up paddleboarding at an early age and splits his free time between stand-up paddling, windsurfing, and surfing. His passion for water is as strong now as it ever has been. As a result, Black Project is a company founded by and run by enthusiasts who build what they want to use themselves. With that, I am honored and excited to turn this over to Chris Freeman from Black Project. Chris, take it away.
Hi there. Hi there. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and it's a pleasure to be here and get to share some time talking about paddling and answering some questions and doing anything I can just as you said there to share the love of paddling and the water so we can all enjoy it more. So really, I think the key thing is I'm keen to answer any questions people have. General paddling questions and certainly more product specific questions I don't know, and anything to help you improve your understanding of paddles and fins and how to get the most out of the sport on a day-to-day basis. So first of all, if you're hearing any pings from my email, that means that is because my email is live and is pinging away, so I'm going to quit that out. I'm in the office here in Hawaii, so I'm a number of hours behind you guys, so it's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon here. So, Chris, have you got any questions that have been passed that you'd like to?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. I started paddling back in 2013. I've been a lifelong surfer since I've been 10 years old, but I moved to paddleboarding. And one of the things I've recently gotten into is paddle surfing, believe it or not. I mean, I started doing more distance and some touring, some minor races, nothing major. But in surfing, what would you recommend in terms of paddle length? Because I know I've been going shorter. It seems like I've been going shorter and shorter each year with my paddle. So what are your thoughts on paddle length for surf sup?
Yeah, it's certainly, I mean, paddles in general have come a lot shorter, and that's something I've really tried to promote. And surfing, we have to be careful with the surfing, because if you sup surfing has many different avenues. You have your hardcore surf crew, the Brazilian crew, if you like, who are like on super low volume boards, sinking under the water, and they're literally, they're on an overgrown surfboard. And then you've got guys and people on 11-foot boards and cruising and catching waves as well. So it's so diverse. We have to be very careful to ensure that we're doing making the right suggestions. So essentially, yes, they have come shorter. So that's one thing we promote there. And if you're going below, like, starts of 8-foot boards, smaller boards, then you're probably not going to be any more than your height. If you're on a bigger board, you're going to perhaps be a couple of inches above your head height. And if you're really sinking right down, at least you're under the water or very low, you might be a couple of inches below your height. So it's somewhere in that range. And there's a chart on the website, if you look on the paddle length, that talks specifically about surfing and actually about the concept of reserve buoyancy. So if you think about someone who's, so I'm going to talk about kilos and using the metric system. If you talk about someone who is, let's say, 200 pounds and let's say approximately 100 kilos, and their volume of their board is 100 liters, let's say you've got a neutral, you're flat, okay? Well, if you suddenly now go down to an 80-liter board, you can see that differential between 100 and 80, you're going to be sinking under the water and therefore need a shorter paddle. If you are at 120 liters, you've got 20 liters of reserve buoyancy, and therefore you're going to be sitting higher up in the water and therefore need a longer paddle to go to do what you need to do. So essentially, that's one of the things we're looking at. The bigger the board, the slightly longer paddle you're going to use. The shorter the board, the smaller the board, the smaller paddle you're going to use. And I think the key is just adjusting slightly over time and not being afraid to adjust it. Like, I change by about quarter of an inch at a time. And if I'm on a bigger board in the winter, so in the winter, when the waves are really big, we use a thicker board and more volume, just to make it easier to paddle, make it faster to get into waves. And therefore my paddle for winter surfing is almost half an inch longer than the paddle I use at the moment. It's summer, it's small waves, literally want something super small, just to get into a wave and get surfing with it. What's your sort of board and volume you're talking about, and weight? How does that correspond with what you've been doing?
Yeah, so the board I'm riding, it's NSP DCX, 9-foot. The volume is about 116. Yeah. So it's got I think I can go, based on what you're saying, I can go a little bit shorter, which would make some sense for sure, because I'm probably at like a 70.
How heavy are you?
Yes.
How heavy are you?
I am 146 pounds.
Well, okay, I'm just converting this. 146 pounds in kilograms. Okay, so as people probably realize I'm British, so okay, so it's talking, you've got 66 kilograms, so that's 66 liters of volume. So you've got 50 or so liters of volume in reserve. Is that about right? You would say. If we look at that in terms of paddle length, I'm just going to our chart here. I haven't got all the numbers in my head. So if you're talking about a reserve buoyancy of there's my chart here. Okay, so yeah, and how tall are you? Chris, how tall did you say you were?
5'7".
5'7". Okay, so probably about 70, 71 inches. Is that about what you're using?
Okay.
Or?
Yeah, I could probably go down to probably an inch or so. Yeah, from what I'm using currently, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean it's a difficult thing, and if you use hot glue, then it's easy because you can shorten as you go along. That's one of the key tip is, you know, it's one of the reasons people end up with too long a paddle is because so many paddles were epoxied, both blade and handle, and it just means that you don't want to go too short, so you end up cutting it too long, and then you get stuck with that. So if you use hot glue, then you can always adjust it for a quarter inch at a time until you get what feels exactly right. And a good key, if you feel like you're getting pain in your shoulder, then, or you feel like your arm is stretched up, as you're paddling, you get tiredness, then it's probably a little bit too long. And if you feel you're bending over a little bit too much, maybe lower back pain or a little bit wobbly even, you know, if you're too low, then certainly you might be a little bit too short. And it also depends on your stance. If you really bend your knees, then you can go a little bit shorter.
Awesome. And I guess a follow-up question to that would be just the shaft in terms of stiffness for surfing specifically. Not, you know, race we know pretty much, or distance, but for surfing.
Yeah. There's a couple of things at play here. The boards are smaller, so you're powering less board. You're also going to be shorter in the paddle, so the relative stiffness, as a paddle gets longer, even with the same materials, it gets more flexible. So if it goes shorter, it becomes stiffer. And this is one of the problems which smaller paddlers always had, is that paddles have been built too much for bigger people for various production reasons we could get into later. But so it tends, if you cut the paddle down, it becomes too stiff. So as we're going shorter with paddles with surfing, we need to have a correspondingly more flexible shaft. And that means that you've got a lot more feel when you're surfing, but it also protects you, you know, because often it's not just one day of waves, right? You might be on the water for 3 hours one day, and then you wake up the next morning, it's still firing. You want to be able to get out there and not be in pain. So that's certainly, and you know, everything about surfing, you don't want to go too flexible, but the right amount of flex means that it just helps you in the wave, helps your body, helps you if you fall off a little bit. You know, it's all a win-win, and that's something we've been, you know, really promoting, particularly the surf paddles.
Excellent. Yeah, I think we have a pretty full room right now. So if anyone has any questions, this is really kind of an open mic. Here we go.
Lauren just purchased a race board from Flying Fish. Cool. So Flying Fish is a great company out in Florida. We're actually just done a collaboration with them. And all the new Flying Fish boards are coming with a special Flying Fish Edition Black Project fin. So a few of those are going out, and we've got a whole bunch arriving the next couple of days, and we're going out with those boards. So that'll be good. I sup on the Chesapeake Peak, flat water and some chop. It's just for a new race, so I better find a paddle locally. Sorry, I'm not reading a bit too quickly. I think, Lauren, the key here is you can start off a bit longer, and as you're gradually going to work your way down, as you said, with the hot glue. Sorry, I'm saying fin. Oh, okay. Sorry, I was talking about paddles there for a second. I'm talking about a fin for flat water and some chop. It really depends on how stable you feel on your board. Often, if you're going slightly narrower on your board, we've got here about going down to 25 now. If you were previously on a wider board, you might want to start with a fin which is bigger with a bit more area, which gives you that stability and tracking. And then as you get more comfortable on your board, or those days where it's not so windy or choppy, you can go a little bit smaller, and that makes it easier. And is it better to find a paddle locally or easier adjusting? Is ordering okay? To be honest, like we based here in Maui, and we ship worldwide from here. Now it's my job to help make sure people get what they want, and we do that, you know, day in, day out. So with a few simple questions, we can find the right paddle for you. And if there's any problems, we can always adjust things anyway. So it's, you know, we are based here, we FedEx, you know, worldwide from here every day. So it's not a problem ordering direct with us. That's a large percentage of the business. We do obviously have a number of retailers around the country and around the world, but it's not always easy for everyone to get to a store. So I'd say if you have specific questions, look at the guide on the website. It will, you know, that's written by me, so it's pretty much the same answer you'll get. If it doesn't make sense, when you go through the paddle guide, then drop me a message and we can either solve that via email and give you some suggestions, talk about the options. And we're also now doing one-on-one consultations on the phone to help make sure people get what exactly they need.
That's awesome. And Chris, just a real quick, it looks like Seychelle has joined us.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Seychelle. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Yeah.
Good.
So
Thanks
happy
for
you
joining us.
invited me to come on. This is really great.
Yes, I mean,
welcome.
Just to use Seychelle as a good example, is like, you know, in terms of paddles and so on, and you know, looking for, you know, getting the right options. You know, we managed to do that. And Seychelle and I'll talk about paddle options, and you know, I'll disagree sometimes, and she'll disagree some other times, and then we'll come up and ideas and try different things and make adjustments. And it's, you know, so we do that consultation, you know, from you know, the very best thing, Seychelle, and right through down to someone who's just starting out. And you know, it's that experience that working with these people means that, you know, I would say most times we'll get it right, and if there's any problem, we'll fix it. Hey, Seychelle, how are you?
Hi. Sorry I'm a bit late. I had issues, but yeah, just, you need to fill me in, or I can just jump in, or just, you know, if there's questions, let me know how I can help.
Good. So if anyone's got any questions for Seychelle, that's our special guest star that no one knew was coming. So if you've got a specific question for her about paddling or training, please add that to the Q&A, and she can come and answer that. Okay, I'm going to take on Tracy's next question. Maybe you can jump in with me, Seychelle. I've got Tracy here. I currently have a combo paddle that is just the height for surfing or flat water. I'm looking to get paddle design for one of these activities. If I'm going only to buy one new paddle, which type of paddling will see the largest improvement from a new type-specific paddle, or I do about equal amounts of each types of paddle? That's a really good one. I love that question. I think it is about picking the paddle you're going to get the most use out of. You're probably going to get more benefit from your flat water paddling by getting the right paddle than your surfing. Would you agree, Seychelle?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. If you want to get one paddle specific, I think it's more important to have a race specific paddle for flat water, because you're going to feel like surfing, it's about being on the wave anyways, and you're only paddling as much as you need to get on the wave, right? So flat water, you actually have to keep, you need your paddle to be super effective in order to move efficiently. So I would definitely, if you were going to have to pick one, I would go with the flat water, with the hydro, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay.
Lauren's talking about my nutrition challenge and how I joined their challenge.
Tell us about that. Yeah.
Crossing over between paddling groups and Zoom calls here, which is awesome to just kind of see some of the same people in different places and being able to connect with you all, you know, from near and far. It's really cool to see. So I'm excited you'll be joining us, Lauren. That's awesome.
I just wanted to remind, while we're here, Chris, perhaps you can queue up another question for us. I just want to remind everyone, when Chris reached out to me to mention this, I said, well, what can we give you guys back? And I see some people have already done this, but there's two things we're giving away tonight. One, and all you need to do is fill in one very simple form on our website. And if you go to blackprojectsup.com/C, that's blackproject.com. Sorry, Black Project. I haven't got the blackprojectsup.com/SEA. And if you sign up there, you will automatically be sent a $25 gift card to our store. I'm doing some of these live now. I've sent a few out already. And also, Seychelle is going to be signing a fin, hopefully, if she's found the fin and some pens. And everyone who is registered in that we're going to draw that at the end of this. And we'll announce that tomorrow, that you're going to get this lovely tiger, which Seychelle is going to sign and ship off to you. So
And
it's one of the things we love to do. You get some very special. So yeah, all you have to do is go to blackprojectsup.com/SEA, and there's a special page for all you guys that have set up today. Register there to get your $25 gift card and also a chance to win your fin. I can see that we've already got a bunch of people. I think there's a few people. We sent this out on email, and I've already processed a bunch of these and got them out. And I'm sure I say we've got more coming in now. So after the thing, I'll get those processed, and you can all enjoy that. Okay, Chris, your questions. Next question for you.
Yes, absolutely. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of everyone from SPC for, the generosity and the support. And if I can just jump on a quick tandem, we have an announcement that we'd like to make on our end that we're excited to announce tonight here during this paddle chat that Black Project is now going to be the official paddle of Seacoast Paddleboard Club. So really stoked to kind of welcome you guys aboard. So thank you.
Cool. Yeah, so we'll make some paddles available. We'll get some paddles over there fairly soon for you to try out, and also arrange, a special way that everyone can order paddles and things, and and really have access to all the resources. And it's a nice big family here, and I think it's nice to have Seychelle on here. Hopefully we've got one more guest appearance who is actually staying in my house at the moment. So hopefully he is going to pop in. Isn't surfing all afternoon, but we'll see if he turns up or not. A little bit later. But question have you got a specific question? I'll leave it up to you, Chris. I've talked a lot.
Yeah, we have a question from Jace. Thoughts on bench shafts for performance?
I will honestly say I've never used one. Seychelle, have you?
I haven't used one. I haven't had a desire, really. I haven't seen a lot of evidence to suggest that I should try one. So no, I don't have a lot of thoughts on them, unfortunately.
I've got some, to be honest, I've seen and I've picked them up and tried them. I haven't tried them, I've seen. There's two things I would think about that. First of all, if you're putting a bend in the shaft, you're increasing the effective length, the actual length of carbon being used. So you are going to increase your weight slightly. So a bench shaft is going to have a slightly heavier paddle. I do remember going back, and the only reference I personally have is from windsurfing. And for a time, it had bent booms, and you could have them at different angles. The aim was to alleviate the stress on your wrists. This is going back to early days when I was racing, so early 90s. And some people loved it, other people didn't, and they were a bit heavier. And ultimately, simplicity is what I believe in. And I haven't followed that path, but I've certainly seen examples, and I'm interested to hear if anyone has had experience that they want to share with us while we're here. That'd be good to hear.
Only time I ever saw them was in Europe on some of the longer races, like the 11 city tour. People were saying, oh, well, it's going to help for, I don't even remember what, but I still wasn't convinced for long distance. And I've done a lot of long distance. I've done a lot of sprinting, and I don't know. You would think you would see it. They were around a little bit more in several years ago, and not so much now. And so you would think that if there was something to be said there, we would still be seeing them. It would have grown. It would have been popularized. Chris, the project would have been about a bench shaft paddle if they were worth making, right?
No, I've thought about. We've thought about. Some of it comes down to manufacturing as well. So I think people, that when you're making design decisions, it's not necessarily only about the very most, the best. You can't, because you have some degree of constraints, and especially in a small sport like paddling, we're not talking big companies. We're not talking huge volumes, and therefore there are definitely manufacturing constraints and cost constraints. So it's a different tooling you need. It's a slightly harder process to do it. So it's going to push the cost up, and also make it harder to make a consistent product. So there's, so simplicity is certainly favored, in my opinion, in terms of production. So keeping things easy, consistent. I'm going to move my screen here because I'm looking a little bit. I'm looking at one screen and the camera somewhere else. So yeah, I think it's a difficult one. To do the extra tooling is a big expense. And then the manufacturing itself becomes harder than a straight tube. But I thought about possibly a slightly, constant curve shaft, almost spring loaded, if you like. So you've got this. So as you paddle it, but I've thought about a few different things like that. But it's to be honest, to make a prototype is so expensive that it's not been a focus. To spend. This is how much it would cost to make one prototype shaft. It cost us about $5,000 to make one prototype curved shaft, and yeah, it's just not a viable option, really. Okay.
Yeah, we have the Chattajack just announced, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
So, question here from Doug. Any recommended fin choices for this specific race for Chattajack?
Yeah, I did Chattajack the last few years. Last year was my first year, with Black Project, and I ended up using my Sonic, which was an interesting choice because I usually go with the Tiger for most flat water conditions. However, there was so many weeds on the river that I decided, just in case, I wanted to use the Sonic. And I think that you've done some work on the Tiger since that original one that I had, that I had one time picked up some weeds on it, and I haven't picked up on weeds on my Tiger in a really long time. But the Sonic I choose when I want it to be a little bit more maneuverable, and it ended up working out really well. Because the thing about Chattajack, the thing about that river is you get upwind, you get downwind, it's not, you never quite know what you're gonna get. So it's better to take a fin that it's basically, you can handle in all conditions. And so I would say either the Tiger or the Sonic for Chattajack, depending on your board, depending on your paddling style, depending on, what you've trained with. The best fin to use for most cases is the one that you use when you're training, right? You usually have a go-to fin that you use for training. And if you're somebody who has different fins and you like to try different fins, that's great. I have different fins for different situations, but I train with them, and I specifically say, okay, for these conditions or this day, I'm going to be using this fin, and I'm saying, if I'm testing out fins, I'm testing, okay, how it is in these conditions, how it is on this board, right? And so I know, because I trained, how I'm going to feel and how my fin's going to feel and how my board's going to feel, and so a lot of times something like a fin choice can be really important, but it can also be something that you can almost overthink, when really the fin that you should use is the fin that you always use. And I don't know if that's helpful.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's interesting. Chattajack is the race which I get most emails about what fin to use. All the races, it starts early. People asking, what should I use for Chattajack? And it's something I've thought about going over and checking out, because I've not been there. So it's, now, my view is if you've got, and it all depends on your confidence, right? And if there's any doubt, then a little bit more tracking and stability is going to help you, especially if it's choppy and windy and mixed conditions, longer races and so on. So now that becomes very different. A choice for myself is very different to Seychelle, because me, it's more about getting around the course and not falling off and having a good time. Seychelle is more about winning. So if you're looking at about, it's a risk versus reward, right? So you could go super small because you've got your highest chance of speed, because you need that extra chance of speed to beat the nearest competitor. Then you might well take a little bit more risk, because it's either you either win it or you don't win it. You don't, you know, it doesn't really, if you win it, great. If you don't win it, you know, you might as well be 50th. It doesn't matter. It's like, it's all about winning if you're one of those elite athletes. For someone like me, it's more conservative, because I'm more about, you know, I want to get around and have fun and enjoy it. I don't want to be falling off because I've chosen, you know, or not tracking straight enough because I've chosen too smaller equipment or too narrow a board or something like that. You know, we've got to realize that if it's a risk reward, if, you know, we've got to understand where we are in our paddling, and there is no point going too small and falling off. There's no point going too small and sacrificing having to change sides on your paddle stroke too often. So it's really, you know, you've got to judge your own paddling and say, well, you know, this is where I'm at with my paddling, and this is what I'd like to be enhanced at. So that's particularly important. If there's lots of weeds, Seychelle picked up on a good point, that a fin with a bit more rake is going to help shed any of those weeds. And certainly if there's current in the water as well. So if I just want to highlight, for example, what Seychelle was talking about here, is that, you know, a fin like the Sonic in front here is more curved, so any weeds are going to slide off, and a more upright fin like the Tiger is going to be more prone to catch those weeds as well. Okay, so that's really what we're looking at there. But if you're thinking on the other end, let's get another example. So the bigger brother and sister, if you like, are the Rays, the bigger brother to the Tiger, and the Malika is the bigger brother to the Sonic. So, you know, if you feel you want that extra stability in tracking, but are worried about the weeds, and you can go with Malika. If you're not worried about weeds at all and you just want ultimate tracking and stability in choppy water, in changeable conditions and side winds and chop and headwinds and everything, then a bigger fin, especially over a longer distance like a race like Chatterjack, is possibly going to save you a little bit of a headache. But
that's such a great point, Chris, that a lot of folks for Chatterjack, they tend to want to take a flat water board, a narrower board than they are maybe used to taking. And so if, you know, because they think, oh, well, Chatterjack's, it's flat, and so I want a narrower board. And again, I would say you should paddle the board that you're most used to paddling. However, if that is the case, you can do a lot for the stability of your board if you are a little bit unstable by putting in a bigger fin like the Ray. So that's kind of where having fin choices or having a larger fin choice could help. If you're like, well, no, I want to take my flat water board, but I'm not ultra confident on it. Putting in a larger fin can help you feel a little more confident on your board. I would say though, personally, I like to have a bigger board with a smaller fin, because I like to feel stable on my board, and I'm using my fin not for stability. I'm using it for, you know, for tracking and providing the stability that it provides. But I'd rather I'm stable on a board. I'll choose a little wider board and put in a little smaller fin, and that's my preference.
I agree with you, and I think that people are all too quick to go narrow on their boards. And you know how very often I've got people email me, so I've just gone to a narrow board, I've got a 23 or a 22 inch wide board, and now I can't stand on it. And it becomes the same as surfing. You know, you go too small, and I know I've done this, you know, gone too small. And last summer I went on a trip, and I took my small surfboard to Peru, and the waves were big, the wind was choppy, and I had a wetsuit on, and I had a horrible time. Because I must admit, I was like, if you add on, you know, the chop, the bigger waves, and a wetsuit, I mean, I was adding about another 5-10 kilos almost. So I was like under the water on my board, and I was just having a horrible time because I wasn't catching waves. And I would have been much better with having a slightly more clued up attitude and saying, taking a board which I know I'm going to catch waves with. So a bit more volume, a bit more foam, and having more fun. So the same goes with racing. Yeah, especially. Everyone wants to go narrow, and yeah, okay, a narrow board is fast and so on, but you're certainly not fast if you're falling off. So, you know, it's about take those risks in training, take the risks if you're an elite athlete, you know you need to be at the top of your game, and if you don't win, it doesn't matter, but if you win, it's fantastic. But for most of us, like, it's about having fun, getting around that course without too much pain, and ultimately, you know, thinking about using your paddling and the training, your cardiovascular to get you around the course quicker. And trust me, I've paddled in races, and there's people on. I remember the Thames. It's a race I want to take Seychelle to. Is the Thames race, Battle of the Thames, yeah, in London. One of the best races I've ever done. It was just like I went home and you're paddling across past castles, and I was just like, this is amazing. But I know that after an hour of paddling, that there was a guy on an inflatable next to me, and I'm like, wow, he's killing it on an inflatable. And I was on a starboard. I was on like a 12-6 starboard, and he was on an inflatable. And I was just like, that just shows you it's about paddling usually, and not just about the equipment you're using. So don't rush to go smaller, narrower, lighter. You know, you've got to ultimately paddle.
Are there any more questions that you have for me, Chris? Because I'm gonna pop off before it gets too late. It's almost my bedtime.
Can you sign a fin for us? Can you sign a fin for us? Have you got a pen?
Yeah, I do, as long as nobody minds hot pink, okay? So
pink is perfect.
Pink is perfect. That's what I thought. All right. So let's see. I don't know if I can sign it on camera. Let's see if I can go. Yes, I can. Okay.
Lauren agrees.
Let me get the paint in the tip. It's a brand new marker. I gotta get the paint out. Come on.
And I'll send you the label, Seychelle, for this, and we'll ship it off.
Okay,
We're gonna announce it. Yeah, we're gonna announce this on Instagram tomorrow.
Awesome.
Sorry, I'm just
waiting. Chris, we've got a break at the moment. Chris, are we answering questions right? You know, that are interesting for you guys, and any other questions that you'd like particularly answered? I want to make sure that we're hitting your objectives here.
Absolutely. I'm just kind of putting it out to the field here. Does anyone else have any questions? Looking around. Mine was all about surf today. I've been surfing now for a whopping 3 months. Sup surfing. It's been fun.
So you say you just started sup surfing?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up surfing, prone nice.
Yeah.
I just grew up prone surfing, but now just made the switch over to paddle surfing, and it's a period of adjustment. But you know, one day I was out there and it just clicked, and all was right with the world. So it's pretty stoked for that.
Yeah, and I surfed before I paddle surfed. I windsurfed before I went paddling. I did other stuff, and it just stand-up surfing is where I kind of got into it. And that's where I wanted to do, and I was just having fun. But I'm actually going to try and surf a little bit more this summer. I'm going to buy a longboard and get out there. I think do a bit of both, because I think it's really good for you to do both. Do you have much? One big problem we have. I think Seychelle's going to clock out.
Okay, thank you, Seychelle. I appreciate you stopping by.
Let's see this fin, Seychelle. Let's see what everyone can win. So just a reminder to win this special Seychelle.
It's backwards.
No, it's right on the screen. To win this special Seychelle, all you need to do is go to blackprojectsup.com/SEA, and you sign up there, and you will get your $25 gift card and a chance to win Seychelle's signed fin. And we'll announce that tomorrow on our Instagram page. And I can see we've got about 15 people entered so far, so let's get a few more of those before the end, and we'll leave that open for a couple of hours tonight, and then announce that tomorrow. And Seychelle will post that fin off, and some lucky person will hopefully get it next week sometime.
Yay! Thank you so
Awesome.
much. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye. So a couple of quick ones. So Jimmy Duck just had a quick question here. Hey, Jimmy. How you doing? My board is set for both single fin and try. Any good reason to go try?
My personal opinion, having tried both, is no. I've tried both. I've made prototypes for some brands. We've tested them. That being said, I know people who swear by it. I don't think there's any need to. I think if you're, I think the simplicity of the sport is is outweighed by anything. And you've got to also think about, you add more fins to the board, you're adding more drag, right? It's less efficient without getting too much into fluid dynamics and so on. And this is something I can draw some from windsurfing and surfing. Now, we use multiple fins in surfing and in windsurfing in the waves. But what you find is that to get the same level of grip, you have to have more fin area, which is less efficient. Now, that might work well if you're on a wave, but if you're paddling on flat water, then, or downwinding, I don't see the benefit of it in that sense. So no, I would much rather simplicity. I think you're adding in fin boxes you don't need, you're adding fins in you don't need, you're adding complexity you don't need. Keep it simple and focus on your board handling skills. I really don't think there's any need whatsoever to go use more than one fin, even though I know that some swear by it. Without
Awesome. Actually, here's a fin question for you, Chris.
Yeah.
How much damage can a fin take before it's no longer functioning properly? Basically, I was paddling in low tide and I chipped my tiger fin early, so on a rock, so basically lost the speed, etc.
It depends on how damaged it is. I'm just looking around the office. I think it's in the workroom actually. I have one fin that was repeatedly destroyed at an ISL World Championships and won a bunch of medals, but in two parts. But obviously, it depends on the level of the damage. Now, you can sand a lot of it out, and I think I need to do a video on our YouTube page to explain that. And what we'll find is that, yeah, you can do some damage to it, and then you get to a point where it's time for replacement. What the athletes tend to do is have a fin they use for training that gets damaged, that's damaged up perhaps, and then keep one for race day. So, you can take quite a bit of beating before it's, not doing you any good anymore. But, unless there's bits hanging off it and it's creating extra drag, you just want to make sure it's smooth and not, not too bad, in that sense. So if you send me a picture, was it Jimmy who said that? Or no, if you send me a picture of it, I can give you an idea of, if it can be fixed or if it can't be.
Yeah, and Chris, you might as well give your email address if you want to, or your Facebook message, or best way to.
Easiest way is just going on the website and clicking the contact thing, or you can email me, Chris at blackprojectsup.com. I mean, it's, that's the easiest way. And that I spend my days answering questions, so that's what I like to do. So I'm there to answer questions. And there's a lot. I'm trying to get more and more on the website, really working hard on that. It's something we've been focused on the last 18 months or so to really try and make it really, that you can just go through the pathway. And there's a guide on there. There's an option there's the 5-step guide to choosing a paddle, and also a 5-step guide to choosing a race fin. And there will be the 5-step guide to choosing a surf fin as well. So if you go through that process, if you go through it, then most questions are going to be answered anyway. It's going to help you self-select. And then if you're not sure, drop me a message and we can either, exchange some emails or even get on the phone and find out. As I say, usually there's a few questions we can ask which make it, obvious which is the right product for people.
Yeah, I was checking that out earlier today. That was really helpful. That in the chart with, the stiffness and blade size and everything else, it was really well done. So
yeah, I've got to review a few things. Yeah, I love doing that. It's painstaking work and going over it, and I've got to go and you bring a new product in, and suddenly you've got to change things slightly. And I've got a few things I want to review and change. But and all that information comes out of comes out of talking with people. It comes out of, it's not just my ideas. It comes out of talking with people, talking with customers, always reevaluating what people say and what they find out, and gradually over time you slightly change your opinion sometimes and adjust that there. And it comes, working with Seychelle, and we remember we were in Japan this year, and she was working on the sprinting, and it's like some people were going bigger paddles. It was a super short course, and she tried her medium-sized paddle. She went up a size and lost the heat, you know, because she couldn't get the cadence she wanted. So I said, no, look, just stick with what you used to. Go back to your normal paddle. And then she won, and she won the whole thing. So it is through that constant consultation, and we're doing it. I'm doing it on a daily basis with, I mean, athletes from Seychelle. Is like, you know, she will sit there and say, well, what do you think about this? How's this going to help? And all the information we've had from talking with paddlers from all over the world, all different levels, working with her, that's what feeds into helping her choose the right product. And also just the same helps choosing into any customer picking up what they want. So, so it's impossible to get it always perfectly right, but I'm sure we get it right more time. Well, we certainly get more right times than we don't. And I'm pretty confident about that. So it's about just finding what's right for people.
Yeah, the results kind of speak for themselves. You had a phenomenal year, right? So, I mean, 2019.
Yeah, I mean, I remember writing a business plan years ago, and on that, this is before we even made paddles. On that, we were looking at my thing. We want to make products that are capable of winning at the highest level, yet make products which help improve the everyday experience of people who enjoy it as their sport. And I think, you know, last year was, we trickled in a few world titles, but last year really sort of sealed that. And you know, it's slightly accentuated by the fact we had multiple different bodies awarding world titles, which I think is a whole nother chat. But you know, we ended up with 14 world titles across the team, and I'm like, okay, that's amazing. Now, partly, you know, there's a huge group of athletes who are on the team, and so we have some very lucky to have some great paddlers. Seychelle dominated in her field. Olivia dominated in her sense. You know, people like Rai in Japan in the youth, and Christian Anderson in the youth. So across all levels, from elite paddlers, you know, the men, to people like Connor Baxter winning, to Seychelle winning and Rai winning, and fantastic. I mean, that's just like a dream come true. Now, this year is very different, and obviously the COVID enforced very different. Is that the messaging has changed slightly? I mean, because I must admit, you know, last year was all about results and winning, and it's like, well, you know, look, these people are winning, and it's not, and there's a reason why. And then this year is much more about just get out and paddle and have fun, and it's just a completely different year. It's you know, very interesting so far, and it's been a very interesting few weeks. But you know, so this year our message is all about. It would have been nice to carry on about the racing, but and that is a large percentage of our customer base is who want to have that very, you know, that top of the line equipment. What we're finding now in recent weeks, which is great, is that we're getting a lot of people coming in with that more intermediate, getting out and paddling. So just people want to get out and paddle, and they've realized, and they've done probably the same with you guys, but the gym I go to has been closed now since mid-March, and even when I just said it's going to open up, possibly our gyms are going to open up next week here on Maui. Maui, we haven't had many cases on Maui. I mean, we had like about 100 cases on Maui of infection, and 5 unfortunate deaths. But compared to most places in the world, it's, you know, we're relatively untouched. But yeah, so what we're finding now is just people getting out of the water, and that's everywhere. So, you know, going to the gym is not such an attractive proposition right now. So paddling is what everyone is wanting to do. So it's good to see that the sport is super strong right now. Yes, there's not really many races. This year I'd planned to be at lots of races, and I think I've already cancelled 6 or 7 trips that I would have already done, which would have taken me from Carolina Cup from Santa Cruz, London, France, that have already been cancelled, that was due to go to, including trips to China and so on as well. But so it's very, very different focus this year, and probably a healthy focus. And I think it's going to be a good year to get lots of people in on the grassroots and get them paddling, and then next year get back to racing.
Yeah. Yeah, we're seeing that a lot. I mean, people are definitely getting out of the water here in New England for sure. And it's just one of the big questions I get it daily. We host, Tuesday night community paddles, and we've been working on a strategy to actually bring that back. And there's a couple of things on the table, and we're hoping to make an announcement within the next 2 to 3 weeks on how we're going to roll this out. But, we want to do it so we don't actually, we're ambassadors for the sport, so we don't want to actually jeopardize our standing in the community by having people kind of lambaste us for doing the wrong thing or seeing too many cars in a parking lot, all that stuff. So it's been a slow and easy process. Not easy, a difficult process, but I agree. It's always, the waters are a happy place, and it's just nice to get out there. So I agree with that.
Yeah, I like the difficulty between. I mean, I remember early on that we saw those surfers in Australia getting called out in the media and so on. So I think it was, and I pretty much had we were very locked down here and had a very much, I'm not going to go out on the water. I'm going to go out once a week at 5 a.m. completely on my own. And, I'll do that. But, so we did do that, but mostly was just stay thing. We have to get the right message. Got a couple of questions here then. So Doug says, are you working on anything new for this year? We're always working on new stuff. Not all of it ever gets into production. So working on a bunch of things. If you can't quite see, there are things that have a all around position bits of product. So we're working on a few things. Next year is our 10th anniversary of me being full-time in Hawaii. So we're working a few things for that. Nothing is 100% confirmed. So yeah, but one thing I will share with you. What do we do? Let me find where did I had something I was going to show you. So one of the questions we get is, how do we actually do development? Here we go. So this is a good example of how we do development. This is a 3D printed sonic fin prototype, something I've been trying out recently. This is not in production. It's just something I wanted to try, some concepts that we picked out of doing the Condor fin. So I've been using this fin. So for fins now, we just use our 3D printer and print them out and stick them straight on the board and off we go. So that's a prototype. So we're always working on various things in that sense. Paddles, we now also 3D print those. So we 3D print paddle blades and laminate them with carbon, like just one sheet of carbon both sides. So that's how we do those. So we're always working on stuff like that, because not that we need to change specifically, but you always need to keep trying new things and seeing what happens. And maybe there'll be some new things for 2021, but as I say, right now nothing is 100% confirmed. And as soon as the best way to find out is check out our Instagram. That's where I leak a lot of the stuff ahead of time. So check out Black Project SUP Instagram, and keep an eye on that. And you often see some new things. So
awesome. Yeah, I'm just looking at the time, because I know we set aside an hour. I appreciate it. There is one last question, maybe from Jim here. Now that I'm not a racer, but out for competitive curiosity, would you have the ability to change a paddle in mid-race if conditions change during a race? Interesting
Interesting question.
Swap out a paddle.
I think that you would lose too much in swapping out a paddle. I don't know if any racers allowed that or how you'd actually do that. Certainly, you have the ability to change your paddle slightly, and your paddle. Paddlers will have different paddle strokes during the race. You can also choke down on the shaft if it gets windier, for example, and you're going to headwind. You can then hold it further down, which a lot of paddlers do. So probably not. Obviously, it'd be nice to be able to, you halfway down a run, like a downwind run, and the wind dies out, then you suddenly want a bigger paddle. It'd be nice to have your support boat come and give you that bigger paddle, but I don't think you know, it's really viable for the sport. Really. Quite interesting question. Okay, any final questions, Chris, before we run out of time? Hopefully we've answered a few things that people want to know.
No, I think we covered everything. And again, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time out to join us. It's been awesome.
Oh, it's great. My pleasure. And as I said, I'll be processing all the gift cards for people after this. So if you haven't done it already, make sure you get that in. And I'd be happy to take care of that for you. And any questions, always after these things, people, oh, I wish I'd asked the question. I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd. So just drop us a question, and we can answer that on email for you.
Awesome. Well, enjoy. And I'm just going to flash up here your website here, blackprojectsup.com, for more information, obviously. And then you can obviously reach out via Instagram or Facebook Messenger. So again, Chris, really appreciate it. It's been awesome. And thank you for the gift cards and the discounts, and welcome to the SBC family. We're really excited to have you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It's been a pleasure, and it's always good to, you know, it helps me think about things and see some different questions. So I'm always open to, you know, learning more about, you know, people's experiences on the water, and that really helps. Everything everyone gives us and tells us all feeds back into what we do. So if it's, you know, you find a little thing that you find, let us know, and it only helps to make product better in the future.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day. I know you've got still some daylight out there. We're going into bedtime here.
Yeah, no, it's back to Outlook for me, and getting on with back to answering some questions and doing that. And yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm lucky to do what I do, and you know, yeah, it's just an honor to be able to do that and be there for the group of paddlers around the world.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, and
Thanks
we'll definitely be in touch. Okay.
Okay. Chat soon. Bye.